welcome, Kasha. That's exhausting. All of your stuff.
I know it's quite a list.
Oh, I was reading through it thinking to myself, how does a person of just 21 years you're still only 21, aren't you? 21.
Recently turned 23. Maybe I need to update my photo on the website.
Oh, maybe you do, because I've just read out all that stuff said you're 21, but that's all right. Anyone listening now, we know she's 23. Regardless, 21, 23, how I don't even know how you fitted all that stuff in, because it's unbelievable. Like, I believe it, but it's incredible. Are you exhausted?
Thank you. I mean, sometimes, yeah, it is a lot of work, but it's work that I love. So exhausted, sometimes energized most. In terms of activism work and, my own work, I'm very strict with myself in terms of boundaries, and, finding things that fuel me outside of my work life, because although this is such an integral part of who I am, the documentary filmmaking and the activism, I really want to nurture the parts of myself that exist outside of my work life. So external hobbies, and, I've developed quite a few over the pandemic, as I'm sure most people have.
Yeah. See, guys, see how mature she is, because I'm 58 and I still haven't learned to do that. And she's only 23 and she's already learned to set boundaries. So I think that's amazing. But now your life is so interesting. I mean, when we say your life, it sounds like you're 60, but you're not. You're so young, and yet so much has transpired, throughout this life. And there's often, when I talk to people, there's often a kind of feeling or an assumption, I guess, that people that are doing what you're doing were born with a bit of a silver spoon in their mouth and build from, born into money and born into privilege and that sort of stuff. I'm not saying everybody says that, but a lot of people say that to me. And most often that's actually the opposite. There's been quite a bit of hardship at the start to really, I guess there've been that kind of adverse situations that have triggered, oh, hang on, what is important to me and who am I? And so I was watching, you guys need to see this. It's a YouTube clip called Mission Possible that Kasha recorded, and it talks about, her background, but clearly we're not going to play it now. I'd rather you talk about it, but tell us about your childhood and, a few things that happened and how it led to you being where you are now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've grown up since I was 3 with my single mom. Her and I left kind of an abusive relationship to my biological father, and we struggled with money growing up, and I think that was a big influencing factor in the way that I thought about a lot of social issues. But also, my mom is a very strong social justice advocate in her own right, and so she raised me with a lot of strong opinions and very deep-rooted morals. And being an only child, I would kind of, by nature of not being able to find a babysitter or pay for a babysitter, would just end up at a lot of her social gatherings, not always understanding, but absorbing conversations that happened around me about social justice issues, women's rights, the environment. And so I think that kind of really helped me solidify my values from a very young age. And I've always been, although kind of sometimes teased or bullied for my very strong beliefs, I've always held to my convictions, and I've always been like unapologetically myself. And, even if I struggle to fit in, I've always been just very true to those values that I grew up with. And so I think that those were some early catalysts for the kind of work that I do to this day.
Wow. And I also, in that YouTube clip, you talk about going to an affluent school and, living in an affluent community, but you were not, in that category, but you still were within it. And that you used to buy thrift clothes, from op shop. We call it op shop here,
Yeah.
And and part of that was, part of that was money, but also part of that was, well, I'm doing my bit, to make the world a better place. But you were, criticized by the kids at school for doing that. And there's this great story you talk about, and I want to hear it in your words, because beautiful. You used to cross a football field every day with your mum, and what did she used to say to you? Because this is beautiful.
Yeah. So school for me became kind of a tough space to exist in and continue to be unapologetically myself, when I'm sure a lot of kids can relate to this, when, being yourself is kind of made to seem not okay, or made to seem different or strange. So, it would always kind of strike up a lot of anxiety when me kind of walking into school for the day, not always knowing what to expect. I mean, I had friends, I had, good bits and bad bits, but on the days or weeks where I was particularly struggling, my mom started to make this practice where, we'd have to cross a big football field before entering school from the back lot. And if it were a nice sunny day, we would always pause in the middle and just kind of take a moment of mindfulness, tilt our heads up towards the sun, kind of like sunflowers is the way that I described it. And she would just tell me to pause and take the sun in my soul, and like carry the energy of hope and warmth throughout the rest of my day, so that I could make the most of every situation. And it's something that I still, carry through with me to this day.
Yeah. Wow. And did that work? Did that really fill your soul for the day and you felt great about yourself?
I mean, at least for a moment, it wasn't always like it would, be a Band-Aid to everything, but at least it was starting the day on a positive note. And so, I may have felt other feelings throughout the day, but at the next day there would be another chance to take the sun in my soul. So, I think it really helped.
Yeah. And they always say that the way you start your day, determines the outcome. If you start it good, it is usually better. So I absolutely love that. But despite your mum saying all that, and despite you being such a, taking on all your mum's social justice stuff. And when I say that, I don't mean that you copied your mum, because you're your own person and you've got your own set of morals, your own set of values and your own beliefs and your own importances. This is important to me and I really want it to change. But, did you get to a point as a teenager where you felt hopeless or helpless? You felt like, I'm only one person. I want to change the world. I want to make a difference, but I just feel completely squashed. Did you reach that point?
Yeah, I think that there's multiple points where sometimes you can feel overwhelmed by the scale of everything that's happening in the world, especially with the way the news cycle works is, you're so immersed in one particular issue for a very short period of time and then disappears from the cycle. It's not interesting enough. It's not sellable. Like it's not shocking enough. And then something else comes up and, you're completely immersed in that. And sometimes it can feel a bit like you're being pulled under a tidal wave, just seeing everything happening and feeling like, okay, I'm only just a kid. Like I have no power to change any of this. And as somebody who struggles with mental health issues, like that started to really spark a lot of anxiety for me, seeing and caring about the world and feeling a bit hopeless and overwhelmed sometimes, especially living. I mean, I live with privilege. I'm, lucky to live in North America. I'm lucky to have a roof over my head. I am, born being a white, cis woman. There's a lot of levels of privilege that I have, but also I really care for the suffering of others, and, care for the rest of the world, not just my own, immediate surroundings. So, witnessing everything unfold, like climate change intensifying, women's rights kind of being under question in certain countries, like racial inequalities, a lot of that, it really does add up as a kid. But, it didn't squash it. Sometimes it makes you reflect and pause and take a moment and a step back. But, you know, I've always been very active in my own community. So I just tried to contribute locally where I could, you know, in early high school. So whether that was my school social justice club or, you know, independent fundraising efforts through like my own kind of businesses, like selling photography cards to fundraise for local charities, I still tried to do what I could to contribute positively. So, you know, not completely squashed, but sometimes a little bit trampled on.
Yeah, I think we all feel like that too. It's because all of us world changers are, you know, we're very gung ho. We've got a lot of energy, and we put it all towards it. But we all have moments where we're like, oh, well, what's the point? But I think the older you get, and perhaps you've already got there, I think you're far more mature than me. And a lot of my friends would tell you that, would say that too. Karen, she's way more mature than you. But that's what keeps me young, behaving like a kid. But I think you've got to understand your own cycles, you know, in that, and say, well, at the moment, I'm going through one of those phases where I'm feeling a bit helpless. So I'm not going to give up. I'm just going to take a rest for a couple of weeks, because when you're talking about, even as a kid, all those news issues and everything else get to you as a kid, but they also get to you as an adult. You know, you get to a point where you're just like, I can't, there's too much happening in the world, and it's just, you know, I never watch the news because I just can't stand it. It's just all negative. But I do get alerts. You know, I do get New York Times emails, and I see all the stuff, and I just think, oh my God. But you do have to have those moments where you just stop and say, I'm taking a week out because my brain just can't take this crap anymore. Now, and you sort of, you know, I know you at 14 or something got to a point where you're like, oh, I'm just so sick of this bad news, just on and on and on. You talked about these news cycles, and then we all know the media, they do that. They hype us, you know, they you know, if we're not biting anymore, they find the next big thing and the next big thing, and they just totally bombard us. But what was the catalyst that made you say enough's enough? You know, I need to go and do something different. And what was that?
So I would say, I mean, it's kind of my origin story, so to speak, but when I first attended I went to a summer peace camp with a feminist peace organization here for youth. And I learned a lot about, you know, peace, disarmament, feminist movements. Like, I learned a lot from very wise older women and young women as well, who were older than me at the time, about kind of the issue of peace. And, you know, that was something that sparked a passion in me. But really the main catalyst was the opportunity that this peace camp opened up for me. Was I was able to then attend their youth delegation to the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, which is a gender equality conference at the UN every year. And it was my first time really, you know, traveling to the US. It was my first time meeting people from communities all around the world, and hearing their stories in person, and like speaking with and connecting with, and like learning so much from people who were all trying to lobby for or fight for change in their own communities. And I heard kind of what challenges they were faced with, but also what stuck out to me was their fierce, like determined spirit to overcome any of the adversities that they were facing. Because there really is no other way to kind of fuel your want for change other than to like actually really want to change things. So I kind of, it resonated with me, and I'd never, you know, done anything on such a big scale that was like more global. And I kind of reflected on the talents that I had, or the passions or the hobbies, which was like storytelling and, you know, photography at the time. So I was like, maybe if people could hear these kinds of stories, they would also feel like that same motivation that I'm starting to feel to contribute to making positive change. And that's kind of how idea for the Sunrise Storyteller, which was my first feature documentary. That's how that was born.
Yeah. So I want to hear about that. I'm just going to say one thing first. It's amazing when you're around like-minded people, when you're gathering in groups of people that have got the same intent, different projects, but the same intent. It actually, it's what you need, isn't it? It's that thing. It's wow. I'm so energized. I'm so fueled. I've got all these people, and you don't feel isolated anymore, because when you're trying to change the world, make the world a better place, it can be really isolating, because there's individual pockets of individuals sort of just making change. But when you come together in something like that, the energy is just, it rises, like it kind of just picks your soul up and just throws you forward, with this massive big force. So you met all these women, and, it was really inspiring. You talked about your photography and all the things that you're really already good at, that you're already passionate about. And so just then you talked about, this was the inspiration for you making the Sunrise Storyteller, which you decided to pack up, and travel around the world. So, tell us, what was it? I know that you said it was your photography, but what was it that you went, I've got to travel to do this? Because you could have done it in your community, but you wanted to launch even further. So what sparked that idea of heading off around the world?
I think it was really just meeting people from those communities around the world that I had never been to in person. And kind of having that background knowledge in my mind of like the way media portrays those communities is completely it's not entirely accurate. Like, yes, media reports on the issues that are happening, but sometimes maybe they play up on stereotypes or narratives that really don't like serve the full truth. And maybe sometimes they're a little bit one-sided. And so hearing, the scale of the issues that were happening from women in their own communities, but also seeing the ways that they were trying to contribute to the betterment of those causes, that was what inspired me to say, there's another narrative that's missing, and hopefully like through a different kind of media, they can share their own stories. I really didn't want to tell people stories. I wanted, being aware of the fact that I'm coming from a completely different place. I don't have the understanding of a community that somebody living in that community might. I wanted to just help bring the stories to life through a media vessel that was more positive in nature, and that was more focused on, not just kind of blind optimism, like, oh, everything is perfect and everything is solved and everything is fixed. It's like, okay, these are the struggles. Like I've said before, that I think the most empowering stories show you the struggles that people have been through or are still facing, but also, showing the opportunities for action, and also showing the ways that people are doing good things despite those adversities. So it's not just, a puppy is discovered alive under like a ton of rubble, but like it's, this person has faced war and they are helping become an advocate for peace. Like that's kind of, I guess, difference to me. So I just really wanted to present those stories to the world as well.
And they are fantastic stories. Guys, it's a fantastic movie, but or documentary. I shouldn't say movie, because movie's a little bit dramatic, but documentary is way more truthful. But when you so you come from like a not a very wealthy background, and you're going to take 6 months off, and you just say to your mum, I'm going overseas for 6 months, and like, one, what's your mum's reaction to that? And because a 16-year-old girl doesn't just traipse off to South Africa, and God knows where, and think that you're going to be perfectly safe. Like there's a lot of issues in that. But also, how do you fund that? How do you even get the money to do that? So what did you do to do that?
So first reaction was, that's interesting. So do you know how much work that's actually going to take? And which I said no. And I never, ever would have estimated how much how many thousands and thousands of hours that something like this would take. I just kind of wanted to tell the stories any way possible. And then the onus was on me to continue to do the convincing and to continue to find the ways that we were going to raise the money. And crowdfunding obviously has been successful for many business ventures. I've also, at the time, I also saw it recently being used for documentary fundraising. So I enrolled us in a little course about how to crowdfund, and we put together our first campaign on Indiegogo. And then we didn't actually raise all the money to return home, but I had already taken the time off school, so there was no option for me but to go with my mom, because she wouldn't let me go alone, and I wouldn't have wanted to either.
Yeah.
So, we set off and we did 2 more campaigns from our travels to get home safely. So and then we received a small grant upon returning to complete the film. So that was kind of the process.
Oh, that's fantastic. And your mum is actually a movie producer. She's a film producer. So I'm the perfect person to take with you, actually.
Yeah. Now she is because I made her one.
She wasn't then.
No, she had her background in publication, sponsorships and consulting, which is a very different medium. So yeah, she and I both became filmmakers through doing this project. Neither of us had the knowledge beforehand.
Well, that's fantastic. But your mum's prior job would have been very helpful anyway with this sort of stuff. But
yeah,
that's fantastic. And then, so on your 16th birthday, you left and you landed in Africa. What was the feeling when you landed there? Were you thinking, oh my God, what have I done? How are we going to pull this off? Or were you like, wow, the start of a journey?
Both feelings were present because again, fly by the seat of our pants. We didn't choose the subjects before we traveled. We just had our starting destination, and then everything else was planned along the way.
Wow.
So yeah, there was a sense of how am I going to pull this off? And every day I wake up, continually on this project. It's a sense of how am I going to pull this off?
All of us are like that, yeah.
Yeah. So at that time, I was, very excited because I've never really seen much of the world before. And so it was all very new and exciting. And I think I'm fully myself when I'm traveling. And so it was really a journey of self-discovery as well, as kind of discovering these stories along the way.
Yeah, I think travel is, I'm not a big proponent of school. I think that the education system is completely, we do need to learn some of the stuff. We do need to learn to read and write and all that kind of stuff, but it really doesn't suit a big chunk of people, and I think traveling is where you truly learn to understand yourself and to build empathy, to have a different perspective on things. I think it's fantastic. What was the most impactful story or the most impactful person you met that really sort of shifted something in you? I mean, I'm sure they all did, but something that you couldn't get out of your mind or out of your heart.
One person I'm very, very, moved by his story and his work is a man named Juma, who I met in South Africa. So one of my first weeks being on the trip, we met him through kind of the tourism industry because he ran tours of some of the townships in South Africa, like art tours. So he would run tours of all the murals that there were and take people into local homes and get people to know the culture of the community that he had been living in. But he was originally from Zimbabwe. And when he first immigrated to South Africa, there were xenophobic attacks. So because he had immigrated from another country, there was he had to move to a refugee camp for a few months. And he thought about, some of the causes of xenophobia. And he thought of, there being a lack of togetherness and a lack of love and a lack of, knowledge about other cultures. And so he decided that something that he loves so dearly, which is art, and something that he creates, which is art, could be a tool to unite people. And so he started some programs for children in the community of Kailicha, which was where he was living at the time, to engage them in art and dance and music and, help bring people together and also give them a passion that helps them carry through tough times as well. And so that's one of the stories that really, really inspires me. We were able to return back to South Africa to screen the film in 2018. And he had grown his business from being the sole person operating these tours and programs to now employing 11 people.
Wow.
He's really grown his business, and I think he's made such an impact in the community. And also at the time they were starting this art center for his organization. So people could out of shipping containers, they had this multi-level stacked center where you could have a recording studio, a painting studio, facilities for kids to come and use and cultivate their talent. So that was really exciting to see as well.
Wow, that is fantastic. And this same guy, was set up, gave back, set up all this artwork in the same town as he was attacked in, rather than a lot of people, and I can't even say that I would be resentful, bitter, and really defensive, and in survival mode about, being attacked in that town. But he completely flipped it on his head and said, "No, I want to love the same people that attacked me." And that's, I find that, that's an incredible soul, who can do that. And you hear a lot about that, even from the Holocaust and that, people have turned around like that. And I think that's the ultimate in healing your own soul, but I also think it's the ultimate in, courage and big steps, because as a human being, we've got a negative bias, and we're quite fragile, even though we like to be tough, and I think that for a person to do that, that's the ultimate, in strength. I love that story too. I was in tears watching his part of it. I thought, how can you love the people that hurt you? And I reflected on that, and I thought, a lot of people do, and it takes so much to do that. So I think he's now, see, I'm bloody tearing up now. Now we need to stop. But no, I'm not ashamed of crying. I'm the biggest sick, I know. But,
me neither.
I just think he's a wonderful man, and I'm so glad that it's grown, and I'm so glad that he's getting momentum with such a wonderful thing. How did you meet the people? You said you didn't pre-organize anything? Did you just stumble upon people, or how did that happen?
Yeah, so it was kind of funny. A lot of the way we did the South Africa leg of the trip was through meeting people through their sustainable fair trade tourism organization, because we used to belong to a local, travel bloggers, writers, kind of social media people meetup group here. Yeah. So there were connections that saw themselves reflected in communities in South Africa too. And then when we were looking to move on to other countries, we just kind of Googled and reached out to nonprofit organizations in the communities we were seeking to travel to. And, the people who reached back out to us just turned out to be the right people. And there were actually it was kind of a small world. One person who we met in Tanzania, Kareem, actually turned out to be from Toronto as well, and had been coming to Tanzania the same week that we were, and the same day even. So, he was running the organization from Toronto, but would come back to, do maintenance and checks and, spend some time in the community. So it just turned out that like we had these chance encounters where people would, share a lot of commonalities with us, or, we just kind of fall into the right places. It seems like such a strange way to like, people always kind of ask me how they too can, go out and find stories. And I wish I had a better answer for them, but we were just kind of lucky,
Wow. Yeah. And it's really, you didn't just go to Africa though. Also, you went to Thailand, and was there any other countries in there? Because I think in the film it was only a few African countries and Thailand that you showed for memory, but was there other countries in there as well?
Yeah. So the countries we traveled to were South Africa, Mozambique, Tanzania, Thailand. And then returning, we went to San Francisco in the US. So those five places. Yeah.
Wow. And were there stories that you filmed that you didn't put in? Like, was there a hard choice kind of, who do we put in, who don't we? Because you can't have a 1,000-minute documentary, I'm sure you have that much footage.
Ken Burns style. We had about 30 filmed interviews. Yeah. We chose 7, which is a lot to wind down. I chose based on kind of the amount of time we were able to spend with people, allowed me to really develop a story versus, I'll backtrack and say, like, I didn't have a structural idea for how the film was going to be put together when I went out. So it was just going out and collecting material. So perhaps I thought that I might use kind of interviews, just plain old interviews to intersperse throughout the film, but it became more so about the people that I was able to spend a lot of time with and get to know their work. We have a bunch of clips at the end of the documentary of some of the interviews that didn't get to be shared in the film. It was tough, but I realized it would be more compelling to have a more immersive experience with people the audience could connect with better.
Yeah. Well, you might have to make a part 2, or you might have to do a whole heap of YouTube clips or something. But but what an amazing experience, and I just think it's brave. I do think it's brave, because and you went out deliberately to focus on the good and not the bad, but at the same time, you've got to be also aware, you've got to be safety conscious. But I think what an experience. I think it's amazing. And it's been screened 60 plus times and won 30 awards. So this isn't just a, crappy little documentary. This is, fantastic. Like 30 awards. That's amazing. And I just think it's wonderful. And when you 60 screenings, like you just said, you went to South Africa to screen. So have these been screened in a lot of places all over the world? And
so the 60 festivals that we've screened at have screened at the film festivals themselves. I believe sometimes there might have been multiple showings at each film festival. But what we're continuing to do to this day and focus on is educational screenings. So we, at the Global Sunrise Project, and also I as a director, really believe in the power of the afterlife of the film. There are some filmmakers who are of the belief that, once you create the media, it's up to the audience. Like, some people think that, the meaning is up to the viewer or consumer of art. But I also think that, you can lose momentum to create so much potential positive change if you just let people see it and then let them move on. So with educational screenings at high schools, universities, and sometimes elementary schools, actually really love filming it with screening it with primary school kids. We do a screening, and then we'll go, hopefully most often, into a workshop about how they can contribute to social justice issues that they see in their own communities. And so,
oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's been a really great, enriching experience for me, seeing the ways people are starting to think about making social change. But also hopefully it's an enriching experience for the young people who are watching the film and getting to do the workshop.
Yeah, and it makes them realize that they also can make a difference, and that they don't, like you, don't have to be bombarded with the negative news all the time. Well, well, they do, because we don't control that. But you know, I mean, you can turn that off and then change the narrative and start doing good. But and you took a ton of photos on this trip, and you've turned it into a coffee table book. You know of that would be an amazing. Is that available for sale, that book? Or is it just something?
We have it on Amazon,
Yeah.
the e-version at least. Yeah, we're still figuring out. There's been some logistical stuff with the printers, but right now it is available on Amazon in ebook format, which is not quite the same, but we do hope to get it out in the solid, tangible format.
And it's so expensive. Like picture books, photo books are so expensive, and that's, so is it called The Sunrise Storyteller as the book, or is it
Reflections of the Sunrise Storyteller? Okay. A Journey into the Heart as a Global Citizen, I believe, is the subtitle.
Okay, well, go and have a look for that, because what an amazing, and so you got this background of photography, and you've also got all these you've had one, I'm going to say, all these photographic exhibitions. I'm making it sound like that's all you do all the time, but you've had two major ones. Like, I'm sure you've had a stack of smaller ones, but two major ones.
So we've done previous photo exhibits. There's been multiple in, Toronto, New York, Portland. We did one really major photo exhibit called Picture 16, which was in France at this huge educational expo. So we had thousands of students coming in and seeing our photo exhibit as part of the greater educational exhibit, and got students thinking about peace, and talking about peace and what it means to them, what the goal 16 for the Sustainable Development Goals really looks like at a practical level. So we aren't currently running any more photo exhibits at the moment, but that's definitely been one of our great successes, I think.
Yeah. This young person just to put me to shame, but I think it's absolutely fantastic. Like, you're so lucky, because, and I know it's not luck, it's a lot of hard work, but there are so many people who don't know what their passions are. And they spend their life, getting to my age, and like, I don't know what I'm passionate about. So it's so wonderful that you know what you're passionate about, and that you're able to use it to make a difference, and you can see a tangible difference. You can actually see things changing around you as a result of you putting your passions out. I think that's incredible. There's so many people who would this would be envious, would be wishing that they were in your shoes, but I've also got to go on to say that they could. It's just a matter of pushing you a little bit harder and believing in yourself. But I'll get to that, because I'm going to ask you that question when we get to the end. Anyway, you've and all your ton of awards, and you've got tons of awards. You're a member of so many renowned global organizations, and you're an active member. You're not just sort of someone who says I am, but you're actually doing things to make a better world. Is there any one of these that you couldn't have seen coming in your wildest of dreams? You're just kind of like, oh my God, I nominated for that award. I won that award. That just was never on my scope of vision in the future. What's really surprised you?
I would say one of the most surprising or, major kind of awards or, experiences was being nominated and receiving a Diana Award. That is, honoring the legacy of Princess Diana, and her, her dedication to service of service of others, kindness, compassion, and
Yeah.
all of those values that she is so famous for embodying. And so receiving that award was a really prestigious, prestigious title. But, also just, it was very validating, obviously, but, it just shows that people also believe in this work and the mission of what we're doing at the Global Sunrise Project. Big dream. I've always looked up to her growing up. So it's nice to know that hopefully my work is carrying forward that legacy.
Oh, I think that's fantastic. And you've also got the Kim Fook Award, and she's the young woman who, the napalm, there's the images of her, running naked up the road to all these US soldiers. I think they were US soldiers, when the big napalm, bomb went off, and everybody remembers that, and you got to interview her and speak with her, and she's another one actually that's so forgiving of what happened to her. And even just talking to her, what a blessing. What an incredible, wow.
She is such an incredibly kind soul. And she is, so generous and loving. And, when I went to interview her, I expected her to, give me maybe 30, 45 minutes, but she was so gracious with her time, and she sat with me for over 2 hours, and we just talked and talked and talked. And, I'm really honored to have gotten to include her in the film as well, because peace is such a core issue for me, or such a core value of mine, and such also a core issue for me. And so getting to share her story is, I think, the most wonderful embodiment of that peace being peace.
Yeah. There's some credible people in the world, and you also have been at the United Nations 11 times. I mean, when you were a kid, you're at that school, and you were being picked on for wearing thrift clothes. Did it ever cross your mind? I'm sure it didn't, but did you ever dream of, one day I'm going to be in the UN and I'm going to go more than 10 times? Did that ever cross your mind?
I don't think so. I don't think I really, prior to this, I don't know if I ever had like the highest ambitions for myself. Like I always wanted to help others, but I never would have imagined myself being in really high places, or, doing work at a global scale. And so it's a dream. It's more than a dream, because I wasn't actually able to dream it when I was a kid. I just didn't think about it.
I always work with leaders, and I say, imagine I have this thing that is my core thing, is to help people to believe in possibilities beyond their current perceived reality. And I absolutely love that, because we put such limits on ourselves, and I'm just a person, I'm just from Canada, I'm just from a small town, I'm just from, this stuff. And we see these people who do great things as, well, they must have something special, that's not me, and we put these lids on ourselves. And I loved asking the question of people, well, what is possible? What is possible? And once you start think about that, it's kind of like, wow, I've really been capping myself, this. I think it's absolutely bloody fantastic. I love what you're doing. I get so excited doing these interviews, because I get to interview the most spectacular people in the world, and I absolutely can't get enough. And how, like your mum absolutely believes in you. She's got your back. Like, how important is that, to have that person who believes in you? Because some people live in toxic environments, and they try to get validation from family or friends who keep putting them down and that sort of stuff. And I'm always saying you've got to find that person who believes. How important do you think it is?
I think it's, it's important to find one person who believes in you, but sometimes that even in itself can be a privilege. And so I sometimes say that if you can be the one person who believes in yourself, you're just as unlimited as, finding one outside source of validation. But it is really, it's not to be underestimated, the power of, finding community and finding those people who really support what you do and support who you are. So both can be true, and both should, I think, exist at the same time. It's like being that one person regardless, but also, being able to have one person is so valuable.
I like that. I like that, being yourself, being the main supporter. And because I think that, I've had that throughout my life. I've not come from a bad family or anything, but having that own self-belief that's the thing. That's the thing that gets you up every single day without having to have the validation of others. But then if you've got that one person, and then if you've got a community, like being part, as we talked before, being part of groups that actually really lift you up, you're unstoppable. You're absolutely unstoppable if you can get that. Yeah. So you've just got making this new documentary, 1.5 degrees of peace. And what does that mean, 1.5 degrees of peace?
So the title kind of refers to the IPCC International Panel Convention on Climate reports that, state that we can't go above 1.5 degrees of warming if we're going to have a livable climate. And the film looks at how peace and climate justice are really more connected than we think, whether it's in the form of inner peace, whether it's in the form of an absence of conflict, whether it's how climate change contributes to a lack of peace. Like, there are so many ways that the two issues interact with each other. And I really wanted to, through this film, highlight the ways that young people are bridging those two issues and movements, and how we can combine our efforts to create both peace and climate justice for present and future generations. Because I think that the peace issue has been lacking from the climate conversation, how we're going to create climate justice. So I really think that we need to start thinking about it more. So 1.5 degrees of peace is the bridge between the two.
Wow. And that's actually, as you were saying it, I was thinking, I hadn't actually connected the two. I mean, I'm a big proponent for peace and a big proponent for climate change, but I had not bridged the two either. So what that's going to be a very important documentary for people to watch. And your mum's the producer. I love that, because now you've dragged her into a whole new career, but she's obviously good at it, or maybe that was a hidden talent for your mum that she overlooked, and then you kind of forced that out. And I think we're all born with some incredible talent that we often don't even know exists until there becomes a catalyst, and it springs out of us. But you've also got Liz Marshall, who's the executive producer, and a friend of mine, Joanne MacArthur, made the film The Ghost in the Machine, and Liz was a producer for I don't know, producer or executive, I think producer, but regardless, and that was the first time she said she's made a lot of human rights films, but that was the first time she'd ever seen animal abuse to that degree, and it really impacted her. But she's been around in that the social justice arena for a long time. So you've got a real nice crew there for that film.
We're starting to build out a team, and I'm very happy. Liz has been, she's been very active in a mentorship and producing role, and I'm inspired by the work that she does as a filmmaker, activist filmmaker as well. So it's really great to have not just one person, but two people who believe me on board, and my editors and composer. So we're starting to gear up for production, and I actually just got the footage off to my editor to produce the demos. So hopefully we'll be able to share that with this audience and the global audience very soon. So that's very exciting.
Oh, fantastic. Is that what you're going to intend to do for the rest of your life? Use your arts to create peace? Is that what you're hoping to do forever?
I hope so. It's the best place I can see myself making an impact.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd be lucky if I continue on this trajectory.
Yeah.
Making impact through media.
Yeah. I'm not going to hold you to it. We're not going to, make a big deal in 20 years. Well, Kasha said, and, she broke her promise, but it would be wonderful if you could, that would be wonderful, because it's always nice to be doing work that you're truly passionate about and your talents are really immersed in. But at the same time, we all change our mind, or new opportunities appear to us, and we think, wow, that's really feeding my soul at the moment, and I think we're allowed to move around a bit, as long as our big vision is the same, and that is to make a better world, or that is to create peace, or to instigate thoughts of peace, at least. It's I know you can't create peace on your own, but if we're not out there banging the hammer and raising awareness, everybody, nothing's ever going to change, because we need it to be a movement. And but I love you, Kasha. I love what you're doing. You're so inspiring. You're so you're soft. I was going to say energetic, because you kind of know you're just this soft, gentle soul that, and I'm the one that's all rah, rah, rah. But you've just got this, beautiful, it's almost like a stubborn, I won't say it's determined kind of, this definite powerful energy that just sits quietly and determined, and you can feel it through the screen. And the world needs more of that. I'm a very rah-rah person, and the world needs a lot more people who just sit solid and just chip away at change, but I think we need all of us, to be honest, on the same wagon. And you're amazing. But anyway, I've loved this. I've got to ask you my big question. It's not really a big question, but it's in here for anyway. This podcast is Get Off the Bench, and it's to inspire people to take action. So what advice would you give somebody who maybe feels that they're too young, or that they don't have any experience in something they would love to do to change the world?
My advice would be, you can get experience by doing, and that's the only way that you will get experience. You don't need to be qualified to start. Obviously, I wasn't qualified by any means, and I just gave it a shot and learned. And, you can always learn along the way. As long as you're open to learning, then you will go far, I think.
Yeah, I love that too. And I love that you don't have to be qualified. I don't have any degrees. I've done all of my projects without starting with any money, and I think that sometimes we get overwhelmed when we think, oh, it has to be a professional who's got a degree in something and who's got a stack of money behind them, and we get a little bit intimidated by that. And I think we need to let go of that crap, because every single person in the world has got power. Every single person. So I love that you're saying that, and it's get started. That's one thing I say, we Get Off the Bench. Just take the first step. And if you muck it up, you muck it up. Just get moving, because you will never get anywhere unless you take that first step.
Absolutely.
You can't drive unless you turn the key of that damn car. So get going. I've loved. Sorry, you're going to say something?
Get moving. Wake up, everybody.
Come on, everyone, get off the bench. But, I have absolutely loved this. I'm sure there's going to be people that want to follow you and check it out and everything. Just follow you, have a look, just start getting on your journey, supporting you. Just, I don't know. I love this. Where can people find you?
Our website, globalsunriseproject.com. Our other website, 1.5degreesofpeace.com. I've got that right.
That's right.
And then we've got Instagram and Twitter at Global Sunrisers. Those are the best places. And of course, through our other websites, through our websites, you can find all the social media and all the other, sub layers of websites and ways to connect with us. There's a lot of them, but those are the main ones.
There is a lot of them. I've actually got a big list here, and you've missed the website, the Sunrise Storyteller.com. Yeah. So I'm going to put all these in the show notes anyway. Yeah. But even if you just start, as Kasha said, if you just go and look at one, it sort of trickles down into all these other sub websites, and it is really hard to just bang everything on one website. I've got multiple, because it's just it's impossible just to, crash everything together. But Instagram, Facebook and all that kind of stuff, Twitter, but also LinkedIn. So Kasha Sequoia Slavner, if you want to connect with Kasha, and she's just a gem, an absolute beautiful, beautiful song. Oh, and there's also the YouTube. Go and watch that YouTube clip, Mission Possible. That is fantastic. I think you were 19, I think you were when you did. See, I got that age right. See, and I'm not going back to re-record the start. That was a lot of mouthfuls in that.
Yep. Totally understood.
But this has been fantastic, and I'm so grateful for your time. And I've talked to you on, I've been on many Zooms with you, but we've never had this opportunity to sit and chat for an hour. But it's just you're an absolute blessing to this world. You really are, and I'm so pleased to be in the same world-changing community as you. So I feel really privileged.
Thank you so much. It has been so much fun to chat with you as well.